Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a look inside the huge fortress that Google has built around its App Store. We're going to break down why every single developer now has to ask for permission for, well, almost everything, and what that really means for you and that phone in your pocket.
All right, so let's get right into it. When you download an app, you just kind of assume Google's done its homework, right? Kept you safe? But what if the main thing Google is protecting isn't you? What if it's protecting itself? Our source for this explainer says that behind the official story, there are 4 other real reasons driving all these changes. So stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to see the real goal behind all this protection. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the official story from Google. Then, we'll dive into the 4 real reasons our source says are the actual drivers. And finally, we'll piece it all together to see the big trade-off this creates for every single Android user out there.
All right, first up, the official story. Let's start with Google's public-facing case, which, honestly, sounds perfectly reasonable on the surface. It's what you'd want to hear.
So, number 1 on Google's list, and it's a big one, is user security. Think of this authorization process as a digital bouncer. It's there to stop malware, viruses and spyware, from getting in. It's meant to prevent phishing attempts that try to snag your login or, worse, your bank details. And it's also there to fight ransomware, that nasty stuff that locks up your phone and demands cash. It's all about stopping those absolute worst-case scenarios.
Next up is privacy. And this isn't just a nice-to-have. It's legally required, especially with powerful regulations like Europe's GDPR, or RGPD as it's known in some places. I mean, this law is a huge deal. It gives people real control over their personal data, and the fines for messing up, they are absolutely massive. So companies like Google have to take this seriously.
And it's not just about stopping malware. Google's official story has a few other key pillars. They talk about privacy in a more granular way. Making sure that a simple game isn't asking to read your text messages. That's a big one. Then there's quality. They're trying to filter out the junk apps, the ones that crash all the time or secretly munch away at your battery life. They also do content moderation, so getting rid of apps with hateful stuff, illegal gambling, you name it. And all of this, it all rolls up into one really important idea: trust. Because if you don't trust the Play Store, you're not going to download apps and the whole ecosystem just falls apart.
So it all sounds pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, who doesn't want more security and privacy? And our source totally gets that. They agree this is all at least partially true. But, and this is a really big but, they argue that this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's the convenient, public-facing story that hides a much, much deeper agenda.
Okay, let's pull back the curtain. Here's real reason number 1 our source points to: building a massive legal shield. And it's all about shifting risk away from Google. You have to understand the kind of pressure Google is under right now. It's immense. In Europe, you've got these huge new regulations like the DMA and the DSA, which are specifically designed to put big tech companies in check. Then you add the constant threat of those GDPR fines we mentioned, plus a nonstop flood of lawsuits about tracking and advertising, and pretty soon, that old reputation of Android being the Wild West starts to look like a massive legal and financial liability.
So how does this new authorization process act as a legal shield? Well, according to our source, it's a pretty brilliant 3-step move. Step 1, Google makes the developer the one asking for permission. They have to explicitly request access to sensitive stuff, like your location. Step 2, Google's response, whether it's a yes or a no, creates a paper trail. It's a documented record of compliance. Now here's the magic. Step 3, if that app ever messes up and a regulator starts investigating, Google can just point to that record and say, hey, don't look at us. The developer asked for it. We reviewed it. And just like that, the legal responsibility, the liability, it gets shifted right onto the developer's shoulders. Pretty clever, right?
Our source is really blunt about this. They straight up call this whole system a form of legal insurance in disguise. Every time a developer fills out one of these forms, it's like they're paying a premium on an insurance policy that protects Google, not them. It's basically outsourcing risk to the entire developer community.
All right, on to real reason number 2. This one's a bit more technical, and it's about a fundamental shift in what Android even is. It's about transforming it from an open operating system into a tightly governed product.
See, Android started out as this really open platform. It was permissive, it was modular, and that's what led to this incredible explosion of innovation. Developers could create all sorts of powerful tools, things Google themselves probably never even thought of. But that era, it's coming to an end. The future of Android is all about control, a world where getting access to powerful system features isn't just a given. Nope, now you have to justify it and you have to get it approved by a central authority.
And this is the really crucial takeaway here. This isn't just some small policy change. This is a deep architectural re-centralization of the entire operating system. Power that used to be spread out, giving developers freedom to experiment, is now being pulled back to the center, pulled back to Google. It is a deliberate move to regain absolute command over the platform.
Okay, real reason number 3. This is the one people don't often talk about, but it might be the most important. Money. We're talking about protecting Google's core business, its advertising empire.
Now, just to put this in perspective, Google makes a ton of money from its cut of Play Store sales, that 15 to 30% fee. It's a big number, but it is absolutely dwarfed by their ad revenue. I mean, it's not even close. Advertising isn't just a part of Google's business. For all practical purposes, it is the business. It's the engine that runs everything, and it has to be protected no matter what.
So what could possibly threaten that massive advertising engine? Well, certain kinds of apps. We're talking about network analysis tools that can show you exactly how your data is flowing and which servers your other apps are sneakily talking to. Or even more directly, ad blockers and tracker blockers that just cut off that whole data pipeline. Basically, any app that shines a light into the murky world of digital advertising is seen as a direct threat to the bottom line.
And this, right here, is the master stroke. By forcing developers to ask for permission to use these powerful networking tools, Google has effectively given itself a kill switch. Any app that might mess with the ad model can now be conveniently labeled as sensitive. And once it's sensitive, its approval can be slowed down, its features can be neutered, or it can just be flat out rejected, all under the very convenient excuse of protecting user security and privacy.
All right, we're at our final real reason, number 4. Our source calls this the gray zone. This is about a whole class of apps that aren't malicious at all, but Google still sees them as a big problem.
So who's actually using these gray zone apps? Well, these are the tools of the trade for people whose jobs require them to look under the hood of the system. Think about investigative journalists trying to track down a data leak, or activists trying to stay safe from surveillance. We're also talking about security researchers and professional pen testers, the good guys who get paid to find security holes before the bad guys do. These are powerful tools for inspection and for defense.
Now, the issue for Google isn't that these apps are illegal or malicious. They're not. The problem is that they make the invisible visible. They expose the system's limits, they show how digital surveillance can actually work, and they poke and prod at Google's defenses. And our source argues that Google, like pretty much any company running a huge platform, would much rather keep its system as a kind of black box. So any tool that brings too much transparency is seen as a threat to their control.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. What's the final trade-off here? What does all of this really mean for the future of Android?
And this really lays out the fundamental choice we're all facing. On the one hand, there's a huge upside. Android will, without a doubt, become more secure. It's just going to be harder for the really bad apps to get through. That's the pro. But the con? Well, it's a big one. In exchange for that safety, the platform becomes way less inspectable, a lot less transparent, and ultimately less controllable by you, the user. Those powerful tools for analysis, for customization, for really understanding what your device is doing, they might just fade away, rejected for being too sensitive.
So in the end, our source boils this entire, very complex strategy down to one simple, powerful idea. Security is the argument. Control is the objective. User security is the public-facing reason, the one everyone can get behind. It's the perfect justification. But the ultimate goal driving the legal strategy, the technical changes, all of it, is total centralized control.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty big question to think about. We all want our digital worlds to be safe, right? But as the walls of these walled gardens get higher and higher to keep the bad guys out, are we accidentally becoming prisoners inside? What do we actually lose when our platforms become perfectly safe, but also completely opaque and totally out of our own control? It's a trade-off that's happening right now, and it's definitely something worth thinking about.